As usual, thank you for joining. So, so what are the things that we are going to deal today? So, uh, yeah. So sorry, it's week four assignment solution. We'll be discussing the answers, and then if you have any clarifications regarding the answers, just unmute us. Or feel free to ask so that I can help you with that. And after that, last week we were discussing about you know the status of wind energy. Uh, so this time I thought we can discuss a little bit more about solar energy and try to understand what the status of that little few other aspects of solar energy that we often tend to miss out. Okay, so that's the session outline for today. So going ahead, yeah, from previous week assignments. The first question: ocean color is one of the factors affecting the surface albedo changes. True or false? So, surface albedo is the ability of a surface to reflect the light here, ocean surface to reflect the light. So is the ocean color responsible for affecting the surface albedo change? So that's true because you know if the color of the ocean is primarily responsible for this albedo effect. So if the color changes, so is the albedo effect, or the amount of sunlight that is reflected off the surface changes. And this albedo effect is predominantly seen at the poles in Antarctic and Arctic because these are plain white areas. They reflect lot of sunlight into the outer space, thereby reducing the amount of warming that can be caused by the sunlight being incident into the atmosphere. So, because of warming climate, these polar regions are melting, and since these white sheets are melting, there will be more light that is will be coming into the atmosphere, and then that will lead to much more warming. So is going to be more like a positive feedback, and going to affect create induce much more warming. So yeah, going ahead. Which of the following is not an immediate effect of small changes in the climatic pattern? So there are a set of arguments that were given. So which of them is not an immediate effect that you will see due to change in the climatic patterns that we are witnessing today? Okay. Uh, increased strong tropical cyclones in the North Atlantic region. So it says that there is likelihood of increasing strong the intensity of the cyclones in the North Atlantic region, increased warm spells and heat waves, increased drought in Mediterranean and West African regions, increased droughts in Central and North American and Northwest Australia. So it's not an immediate effect. It can be, that means they're trying to refer which of is you see the long term. So you see these droughts, increasing droughts in Central and North America and Northwest Australia, which are relatively wetter regions, especially Northwestern Australia. So due to this changing climate patterns, the the season, the trade winds or the winds that carry in you know uh, rain is going to change, and that's going to lead to increasing frequency of droughts. So going to third question: 15,000 years ago, the rate of sea level, has it increased or decreased? Okay, uh, and then if so, the how much amount it has changed. So the rate of sea level 15,000 years ago, it has increased to 45 per year. It was increasing. So it's not like the sea levels are rising these days itself. The sea levels have risen in the past and have fallen down. So that's what it is. We are trying to say here. 15,000 years ago, the sea levels have risen to 45 millimeters per year. And so, since we were talking about last time, we were talking about how we can try to prevent warming of our climate. So if you take immediate action now and try to prevent the global temperature increase by 1.5 degrees Celsius. The statement says कि if you take immediate action right now, can we prevent the global temperature increase by 1.5 degrees? True or false? Uh, it's very unlikely that we are going to halt at exactly 1.5 degrees, because if you remember what we were discussing last time, so if we just cut off all those carbon emissions or the uh, activities that are responsible for increasing climate change or increasing temperature, uh, the effect is not going to be immediate. And then we have passed that point where where the effect will stop by 1.5 degrees, because most of these elements like carbon dioxide uh, or other greenhouse gases, they are there in the atmosphere. Unless until you trap them and remove them, the time it takes for those gases to naturally be removed from the environment, the time they are there, so they are going to have their effect. So unless until we try to remove them simultaneously, we are not able will not be able to meet this 1.5 degrees deadline. So we are not, yeah, so it's false. Which of the following carbon dioxide removal techniques can lead to expanded regions with low oxygen concentration and increased N2 nitrous oxide production? N2, yeah. So there are some of these techniques which when we do, they should reduce the carbon dioxide but also lead to low oxygen concentrations. So it's ocean iron fertilization. So if you start fertilizing the ocean with iron, which is the limiting element for this algae which grow predominantly in those areas, that's going to remove a lot of CO2, but it leads to increase in N2O, and then uh, lead to expanding regions with where the oxygen concentrations are going to get very low. Arrange the following renewable source of energy in ascending order with respect to their installed capacity in India. So biomass power, wind power, hydropower, and solar power. So if you all go with the notion that which of these is much more older, or in terms of how much energy is produced by each of these. So we all know that hydropower has been there for quite many years. So obviously the capacity is much more higher for hydropower, followed by biomass power. Oh, sorry, yeah, higher is for solar, wind, biomass, and then hydropower. We have relatively less less amount of hydropower, and but we have increased considerably in terms of renewable resources, solar, renewable source of energy, solar and wind power. Yeah, the right answer is B here. CABD is the increasing order. And so last time we also discussed about carbon captures and storage technologies. So if you implement clean coal power technologies without CCS, can in, this can increase the cost of electricity by what amount? So if we have carbon capture and storage, there might be some amount of cost you have to pay for that. But if you don't have carbon capture and storage, uh, it's going to increase the cost of electricity by 30%, but due to various factors, you know, responsible for the company to manage those activities. And which of the following is the energy indicator for security that has to be taken into account during policy making? So when there is policies being made by government bodies, so which of these has to be taken as an indicator for security? Energy indicator. Energy use per capita, the amount of energy used per individual or other entity. Net energy import dependency towards the energy that is being imported and that dependency on it. reserves to production ratio, what's the reserve we have, what's the production we have, efficiency of energy conservation, conversion. Sorry. So net in energy input dependency. So how much dependent we are on imports of energy is what should be taken as an indicator when you are making policy for security of energy in the future. And which of the following technologies uses filtration technique to remove dust in coal power plant? So carbon capture, selective catalytic reduction, flue gas desulfurization, and electrostatic precipitator. So electrostatic precipitator uses uh, filtration technique to remove coal dust that is that is generated when we burn coal. So yeah, so it clears the electricity clears static charge in the dust particles, and that is removed by filtration. That's how it works. And which of the following technologies reduces NOx from coal power plant? Is it electrostatic precipitator, flue gas desulfurization, selective catalytic reduction, and carbon capture? So we had to reduce nitrous oxide. So you had to selectively reduce NOx to some other forms of nitrogen. So where catalytic reaction will help. So yeah. So that's it from the previous session, previous week assignment. Yeah. So if anyone has any doubts or any questions regarding these answers or questions, do let me know. I can try to go over them again or help you understand them. If and nobody has anything, I will try to move to the next part of the session where we'll try to discuss about solar energy and different aspects of it. Uh, okay, looks seems like no one has anything, so let's just go ahead. So let's talk a little bit about solar energy, which is kind of one of those renewable energy generation methods and has been marketed globally very much. So let's learn a little bit about how do we got to know about solar energy. It's not like we are not known to harness sun's power. We have been harnessing sun power for a lot of time. There have been use of documented use of mirrors to create fire or heat up stuff from from past centuries by humans. But the concept of using uh, light energy to create electricity was relatively recent. So photovoltaics is a form of active solar technology that we generally use. Its short forms it represents as PV by this French physicist. So what the physicist did was, place silver chloride in an acidic solution and exposed it to sunlight. So when this silver chloride, this metal, uh, was kept under direct sunlight, the platinum electrodes that was also attached to it, they generated an electric current. And so this process of generating electric current from electricity from solar radiation is called photovoltaic effect or photovoltaics. And so the process was discovered then, but somewhere around 1954 is when the first solar cell capable to generate electricity enough to run everyday electrical equipment was developed by people from Bell Labs. So yeah, it's relatively in the past. Yeah, it's relatively recent development, like somewhere around 80 years compared to other forms of renewable energy. And uh, if you look at it, so if you all of us have seen a solar panel, right? So what all different structures that are there in it? So the main thing that is present in solar panel are the solar cells, and there are a bunch of other things that's just there for holding the solar panels and protecting them together from external elements. And these solar cells are what the are the heart of the solar panel, where where all this electricity generation happens. So let's just have a look at how how does this electricity generation happens. So it uses this concept called photoelectric effect. So each panel has multiple solar cells, and each solar cell has some semiconductor, has a semiconductor which is used made of silicon. What is silicon? It's yeah, all of you might have seen sand, right? Major component of sand is silicon. So silicon is made from silica. So this semiconductor, what happens was when photovoltaic radiation, which is basically light, it's a fancy name word for light. So when light falls on this semiconductor, what it does is it excites electrons. So these excited electrons jump from this metal and then try to go outside. So this effect is called photoelectric effect, where where the energy from incident light is leads to excitation of electrons. So these photovoltaics or these solar panels try to capture that effect, try to utilize that effect to generate electricity. So and then different form wavelengths of light. The light has the white light, the light sunlight that we see has different wavelengths. So different type of wavelengths can generate excite electrons to different levels. So the shorter the wavelength, the more electrons that can be generated. And then yeah, so what's the process, that how it is generated, so how the solar panels utilize this photoelectric. So on a solar panel, if you see, when light falls on these solar modules or solar cells, each individual blocks, so what happens is the silicon semiconductor that's there in it gets excited. So the electrons in the silicon conductor gets excited, and then it causes electrons to flow through. There are two layers of silicon laid on top of it on each other. So the electrons move through those layers, and then the movement of these electrons generate the flow of electricity. So electricity, if you know, is just movement of electrons. So these movements, these excited electrons keep moving through the circuit, and then we have an inverter that, so this converts this direct current to alternating current, which is form of current that majority of these of day-to-day electrical equipment uses. And this alternating current can be then used to power whatever things that you want. And in cases uh, where you don't need it to convert to alternating current, there is no need for having these inverters. Like for instance, all of us might have seen with solar panel calculator, right? So most of these, they just convert the direct DC current, which is what the small batteries also store that are present in these calculators. So it just uses that flow, and then it charges the battery, and then that's how it is used. And today, this photovoltaics is the way to harness solar energy. And then Yeah, most of this is because of silicon, and most of the semiconductor material used in solar panels is silicon. So yeah, if you are interested, I can show you an animation later on once we talk about this, how these electrons get excited and how they move on. But this is how a solar panel works and generates electricity. But is it just the way we harvest solar energy? No, there are multiple other ways how we harvest. We have been harvesting solar energy. Let's just look at different ways. The first and the familiar one is the photovoltaic solar panel. Solar energy is basically where you utilize this photovoltaic effect or photoelectric effect to generate electricity. And this is what we think of when we think of solar, using solar energy. But there are other ways also. This is the predominant and majorly used one. And the second one, as you might have already seen, is solar thermal energy, where the solar energy can be used, can be turned into heat, and this heat can be in turn used for heating up places like huge buildings, or heating up water, so that you don't need any special heaters where you are spending up energy. Or you can use this solar thermal energy to thermally cool the buildings or places. So you can use those technology, those in those ways also. So not only heat, you can also use solar energy to cool the places. So yeah, so these are the two ones which we are mostly familiar about. And third one is concentrated solar power. So what is this? So you basically concentrated. So these are all what you're seeing are all mirrors. So what does it do? So all the mirrors tries to focus, are aligned such that when sun falls on it, they try to focus all their solar radiation onto a smaller area, like here what you can see as a tower here. And then this that leads to high temperature and heat, so which can then subsequently be used to generate electricity. Once you can use those heat energy to uh, convert water into steam, and then that steam can be used to turn a turbine, and then you can have electricity generation, which is turbine is the way how we generate most of our electricity. So that procedure can be done normally. So where here you're basically concentrating the solar power, and these plants generally are occupy a lot of area and then require lot of management, because the mirrors had to be angled in specific directions. They had to be cleaned most of the time, so that they reflect properly. And yeah, and this is how they look like, if you watch them from air. So these places get really hot because of the concentration of solar energy. And you can also, if you have watched a building which has all the mirrors, you are also using solar energy to passively heat those areas, especially in winters. They increases the temperature, or especially those type of things help in northern latitudes where the temperatures are generally very low, and you don't want to invest in active heating system. So you just try to use solar energy, where having mirrors or glass windows and glass walls really helps. But in countries like India, which where the temperature is relatively much more warmer, having those windows cause much more warming, where then you end up using air conditioning for cooling it up instead of. Yeah. So we kind of use it in different way, just want to show it off there, but not have it properly designed for it. Yeah. And then there is this new concept that has been coming up, where when you're building places, you build You integrate photovoltaics. You basically integrate the solar panels in the architecture of the building itself. Unlike this balcony here, or the windows or the side places where you have integrated photovoltaic cells that generate electricity in on a day-to-day basis, and then that electricity can be used by the residents of the building. So you don't have any energy requirements being sourced from other plants. So this is a recent concept that is being born out, and it's really interesting because you don't have to worry about much space, because if you had just rooftop, if you are uh, in a smaller households, or then rooftop solar panels might suffice your needs. But if you are staying in societies, high rise buildings, where just a rooftop solar panel might not be sufficient to supply energy demand for each and every household in that. So having integrated uh, things in the building itself can really help. And yeah, it's just not buildings. You can also use them on water. So there is this concept of floating solar, pa- photovoltaic solar panels, solar, yeah, way of harvesting energy. So if you have this on water, you can gain two benefits. You can have reduction in evaporation and simultaneous generation of electricity here, and then there is no need for you to go and look out for new land to put up the solar panels. So in this case, in that way, you are kind of in a win-win situation. You don't have to worry about much more land or to fix these solar panels. But yeah, there is a different procedure by the way the floating solar panels are installed. And yeah, there are these larger, very big solar plants that have been installed. Earlier, India's largest plant was in Kerala, but now I think it's Ramagundam's power plant, floating power plant in the reservoir. Uh, yeah. So yeah, this technology is already also there in our country. And there is this other way of installing so power plant, solar panels uh, to harvest energy. The one is agricultural. So you have these permanent structures, that shade lightly your crops so that they are not uh, exposed to sunlight very much, and simultaneously you are not fighting for space to get these solar panels installed. So where the space is much more priority in this current world, where all can you install, have uh, ideas like these can really help. Having you can utilize this type, and then simultaneously the monetary benefits from these type of installations are going to be helpful for the farmers also. And yeah, so that's all about different types and how the solar panels are, and then how we generate electricity actually from solar panels. So let's talk a little more about uh, yeah, just let's just brush over about renewable energy and what's the status of it, and then we can talk about what the status of solar energy currently. Okay. uh, so just going over them again, 30% of the total electricity generation in 2022 was from renewable energy sources, which is solar, wind, geothermal, hydro, and biomass. And of the most of the 174 countries have renewable power targets, but only 37% have 100% targets that they want to achieve. And only three countries have revised their renewable heating targets, especially those. countries from northern regions, especially European nations, where heating is much more required in winter because the temperatures go down so low. And there has been considerable investment in renewable energy and the technologies, and then that's how the advancements has been going on. And of the electricity generation, uh, 23% of the total final consumption of this solar energy is in terms of electricity. Sorry, of this renewable energy is consumed as electricity. And then, yeah, so if you just look at here, there have been an increase in contribution by renewable energies, and yeah, renewable heat energy, either from biomass, geothermal, and solar energy, has increased, and it's currently at 4.9%. So yeah, there has been improvement that is going on with renewable source of energy, and of the heat energy that is generally used, 9.9% is from renewable heat. It can be either from biomass, geothermal, or solar. And similarly, of the electricity generated from renewable energy, 30% of it is renewable, source from renewable sources of energy. And let's look a little bit about solar photovoltaic capacity. Is basically we are referring to the solar panels that can generate electricity in shorter words, or solar energy. We are trying to convert it to electricity. So if you look at in terms of gigawatts, so from 2012 to 2022, in a decade, we have grown from 100 gigawatts to somewhere around 100 1,185 gigawatts. So there has been considerable increase, in global capacity, and there is a considerable increase every year also in how a country is adding to its solar power, how much electricity, how much more of electricity is generating using solar power or photovoltaic panels. And if you look at the top 10 countries that are uh, producing electricity through solar energy using solar panels, especially most of it is predominantly dominated by China, which is also a manufacturing hub for most of these solar panels, and then followed by United States, India, Brazil, and few you know European nations and South, yeah, Australia, and then rest of the world only contributes to 22%. So yeah, we are using related to other countries. We are having the number of additions we are adding to our solar energy, our capacity is relatively high, and that is kind of interesting to learn that we are trying to shift from non-renewable source of energy to renewable source. And similarly, if you look at solar water heating capacity, how it has increased from 330 gigawatts to 542 gigawatts, but you know it's not that drastic increase as we have seen for generation of electricity. So yeah, so there has been increase, but comparatively little less. And so there are multiple opportunities for us to scale up uh, our fight, scale up to fight against climate change using solar energy. If you look at here, if you increase solar energy capacities of the world, there is about we can try and remove somewhere around 4 gigatons of carbon dioxide equivalent per year from getting emitted into the atmosphere itself. So much, which is much more higher than wind energy. And yeah, it might be a little costly, but in the longer term, it's going to help us very much to reduce the effect of climate change. And so it's not like since we found out that solar energy has the capacity uh, to help us fight against climate change way better. So that's good. So we can. It's not like we can go and start keeping up these solar photovoltaic panels everywhere to generate electricity. So we can't, because there are some places where the efficiency is less. So basically, the potential of converting the energy to electricity is less, because uh, the type of sunlight and the amount of sunlight and the duration of sunlight that falls is really important for for the solar panels to be able to convert that incident light into energy. So for instance, if you look at this map, it it's a map of photovoltaic power potential. So the brighter it is, or the reddish it is, the greater is the photovoltaic potential of that area. The yellow is less, green is very less. Yellow is, yeah, yellowish orange is in between, and then green is you hardly get it. So for instance, if you look in the Himalayan region here, especially Arunachal Pradesh, where it's much more green and stuff, it's dominated by rainforests. The potential is also very less. And similarly, if you look at Western Ghats, the the potential is very less. But if you look at you know states like Gujarat and Rajasthan, there is a higher amount of power to potential to generate a lot of electricity. And this is way higher if you look at in trans Himalayan region, so and the Tibetan plateau. So if you know a little bit of geography, Shivaliks, you will have greater Himalayas, and then trans Himalayas are just after the end of Himalayas, and then these are are essentially a cold desert. It's a, so there is, in the daytime, the temperatures go up very high, the ground temperatures, and that can generate a lot of electricity. And there has been proposals for putting up solar parks in the in the Tibetan, sorry, in Spiti, and which comes in Trans Himalayan region. So yeah, but it has its own effects. So how are we going to install them? It depends on that. So not all regions are equivalently have the same amount of potential. They have different amount of potential in generating electricity. So proper planning is needed on where to install these power plants, solar plants, so that we can extract most of the energy. Because the energy, if you look at there will be different ways we generate electricity. If it happens on a bigger scale, then only it's going to be useful for people in in the numbers, the amount, right? If you just are able to put a solar panel just on top of your house, it may not be able to give you enough electricity to do to run all the electrical equipment that you want. So it's really necessary to have these large solar power plants, where you can generate huge amounts of electricity, and then that can be used for even for supply to industries, which require you know many more much more amount of energy. So yeah, and let's just talk about the effects a little bit. So we're just saying this is this is good. It has huge potential to reduce climate change, and it has been doing well. So yeah, so far so good. But does it have any effects? Let's just have a look at some of those effects. So it has a lot of effects. If you look at socio-economic effects, if your land falls in this area, let's for example, if the government decides to, or a company decides to put up a power plant in the area and then the land is yours, they will come looking for, to take up the land. So people has to either give up their land, or might not be able to get right compensation for the loss of land that happens because of these. So there are socioeconomic effects that affects the people, and especially most of these areas are, uh, are you can't start a power plant out of the blue in an urban area, right? Especially cities. So most of these end up, being in the rural side. So there is specific set of communities that will be affected as a result of this. It's not like every community is evenly affected. And there is this thing of land use change. So you are essentially, targeting specific type of land use. So as we were just speaking earlier, uh, forests, it might not be feasible to install for solar plants in a forest, right? Because you hardly get sunlight on the forest floor. So how are you going to install a solar power plant, which takes huge amount of area and then needs huge amount of light? So essentially, you're not going to do it there. So you are looking out for specific land, which happens to be where, this photovoltaic effect is great, and then you have the ability to install those power plants. So especially these type of lands are, present in gra- uh, grasslands type of habitat or shrubland, which are, framed as classical wastelands in the Indian context, and then they are rampantly sorry they're rampantly used for projects like these. So there is a degradation in habitat that happens because of, and degradation and loss of habitats because these areas are lost. Once you set up a plant, there is no way most of the wildlife that have been staying in the area will use. And once this plant sets up, it brings in changes with it. Right. So the way animals move around the landscape changes because they might think it as a hurdle. Some might think it as a hurdle, and some might think it as, nice place for it to relax and chill. So yeah, so it depends on what species you are. If you, for instance, if you are a jackal or a hyena in a uh, grassland or savanna like area, you will try to avoid human habitations because, these are built up structures and they will hinder your movement. You don't want to go into these areas. But if you are, smaller animals, you can take refuge in these areas because your predators are not going to come. So it's going to alter how the animals move in the landscape as such. And because of and then there is a fragmentation of habitat that is happening, due to which, some animals might be affected, like we are just saying. So yeah, and then it also alters the local climate. If you just remember what we were talking about, concentrated capture of solar energy, where, you place a lot of mirrors and then use that mirrors to focus all the sunlight into central part. So this is going to increase the local temperatures, right? So yeah, that alters the climate because, you have patches of areas which are really warm and patches of areas that are not that warm, and you are essentially heating up areas, and that heating, that will have an effect of called heat islands. So it creates. Hi, someone has any doubt? Someone raise their hand. Okay. If there is no doubt, then I'll continue. So this creates heat islands. So that heat islands, might will alter the local climate and have other effects on other regions or the adjacent regions. And especially during construction, people might hardly go to these areas once the construction is finished, because these are often constructed in deserts or remote locations. So, but during construction, they will, the construction related disturbances are going to have a pronounced effect, or might last long in those areas. Like if you're making roads for, for you to bring all those equipment to there, or you have to in the soil, dig up in the soil to install all these mirrors. So it's going to, create a lot of disturbances, and these disturbances, some might fade away quickly, and some might last longer, even after, once you stop, even if you install this plan, that the effects might last even longer. And effect of these type of, large things, large solar photovoltaic projects, some of the other effects it can be, if you see from distance, it looks like a water body in a middle of a desert. So what it's going to do? It's going to, bring in a lot of migratory birds which are migrating. They might just think, I finally I found a water body. Let's just sit down and relax for a while and then continue on our migration later. So because of mirage, they might not be able to, see it as it's something else, but they think they might perceive it as a water body and then try to come and land on the solar panels. During the process, some of those birds can crash into those and then die because of the collision, because of the way they land. Like if you are seeing some swans or ducks landing, they just crash land into the water. They can't smoothly hover and then land. So they are going to, die because of collision. And there are some birds, because of these heat islands, because these temperatures get so warm, they can just die of, that heat shock that they get when they fly into these zones. Or even if they manage to survive both of these, they might not be able to, get enough energy or, enough surface to fly off once they have landed in these areas. So yeah, so it's not that easy for animals to, for especially for some birds to, in terms of the survival. So they affect the survival, especially the migratory birds. But local wildlife can adapt onto how they use these areas. Like for instance, some organisms might just love to enjoy there. Like if you think in terms of some lizards that, that need as warm temperatures to bask, so they can under the bask in the sun, and then once they are warm enough, they can run out and then hide under the shade of the panels. Hi, does this person have any question? Do you have any question? Because you have been raising hand. Okay, like there is no question. So yeah, so there are both positive and negative effects, but there is this need of, to address those issues a little better, because we don't have many mechanisms to reduce the effects of these large scale solar power plants on wildlife as such. Like we had few in wind related effects. So yeah, some of those effects might be as common between the wind and solar, but these are some of the ones that, that are specific for solar. uh, so yeah, there is a need for us to rethink on how we want to use solar energy as, uh, as a way to move forward, and then as a source of renewable energy. And currently, the efficiency of the solar panels is not that much high. It's somewhere, it's very very low. I think somewhere around 20 to 30% is the efficiency. I might be wrong also, but the numbers are really low. So there is really need for advancement so that we can have much higher efficient solar panels, so that we don't need to cover these huge swaths of land with solar panels to get same amount of electricity that can be generated in smaller areas. So that's going to reduce the effect the solar panels have on them. But yeah, the way we make solar panels is also really important. Yeah, that's all I have today about solar energy, on how we generate, and then how what's the current status of it. So yeah, I think the largest solar park is in India. I'm not sure where it is, but I remember that the largest solar park in terms of area occupied, and that in terms of the electricity that it can produce, is in India. I'm not sure whether it is the one that is in Andhra or somewhere, some other place. So if you're interested, you just do have a look at it. So yeah, it's such a huge solar park. It takes huge amount of age. So yeah, that's it. That's for it. And if you guys want to watch the animated video of how uh, the photovoltaic cells work, I can show that. But yeah, before that, I will take any questions if you have. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, sure. Then let me just go back to that slide. Yeah, share this. So you can see it, right? So yeah, let me just play it for you. Hope you're able to hear. If you're not, just try to go with the subtitles. uh, yeah. Uh, so that's a little thing that I want to show that on how this solar panel works. So I thought I'd be better way so that you can relate to what I was saying on how this solar panel works. So hope yeah you could understand a little bit about how solar panel works and then how things are. So if you are interested, you can just go back and check out this video also from YouTube. It's there on YouTube. So yeah, and yeah, I will take any questions if you have on a little bit about solar energy or this session. Okay. I'm really sorry that you're not able to hear that. Uh, I can just try because I think it might be an issue with how I have shared. I don't think the audio was shared. I'm sorry for that. But what I will suggest is if you are not able to follow it through the presentation, what I will suggest is you can uh, Google it and then you can find it again and then see if you're yeah, you can just show you can just Google this part, how solar panels work. You can just Google it. It's there on YouTube. So you can try that. So, uh, so just copy paste that in YouTube. You should get this video because this is a nice animation of how solar photovoltaic cells generate electricity. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions? So that's the end of today's session. And the type of light that is incident, that is really important. So there are a lot of sometimes there are a lot of solar panels that try to follow the motion of the sun. It's not like they're just fixed. Some are fixed, like on this roof you try to face in the angle where the direction of the sun moves. So for instance, you might have the sun movement from this end to this end or this end to that end. So most of the day these solar panels are covered. But if you look at the solar panels in solar parks, they also face that way, and some can move with the direction of the sun. So whichever the direction the sun facing, there are different mechanisms so that they can adjust the solar panels can adjust in an angle and then face the sun so that they can get you know harvest most energy. So that's the other thing that I want to add. Yeah. So yeah, that's it for me. I will wait for a minute or two if you have any questions. If not, that is the end of today's session. Okay, looks like there are no questions. So we'll stop here, and that will be the end of today's session. Thank you for joining. You may please leave today's. Yeah, you can leave.